Hello, everyone, and welcome back to This Week in Guns, powered by Second Amendment Foundation and brought to you by Patriot Patch Company, VZGrips, MAF Corporation, and Primary Arms. This show offers commentary on the latest firearms industry news, information, and buzz. I'm your host, Matthew LaRosiere, and I'm joined by the noble seafarer.
It is I, the rat on the floating ship. It's Captain Rat to you.
It's Captain.
Commander of this vessel.
You know, and I will just tell all of you video listeners, you audio listeners, skip forward 30 seconds. But you video view listeners, if any of you complain about this rat, I will ban you from commenting permanently.
Because that's hatred. That's hatred on naval navigation, and if there's not gold fringe in the flag, then it's not maritime court, and you can get banned from the comment section.
This is a maritime jurisdiction.
It's true.
This channel. Okay, so keep that in mind.
This is a court of the admiralty, and not a court of the magistrate.
I will dust off my, what do you call this? The shoulder things.
Epaulets? No?
Yeah.
Something like that,
or whatever they are. But, you know,
the shoulder dingles,
my shoulder bringuses that go up.
Yeah.
But all right, well, first off, let's talk about. I recently got my first flip out magnifier, right?
They're so nice. I know it's a meme, right? And everybody started dogging on LPVOs because the Grand Dumb did a video, but I really have always liked magnifiers a little bit better than LPVOs, and now that that's the new meta is magnifiers rather than LPVOs. So it's kind of.
So did the meta flip?
Yeah, the meta flipped because it was all Recce rifles, except I'm going to call them Reese rifles from here on out. It was all Reese's rifles, peanut butter cups, and those always have the LPVOs.
Right.
But then Grand Dumb said, no, actually, it's magnifier season. And then everybody was like selling their LPVOs on Reddit, like on the gun accessories subreddits.
Yeah.
Like people were selling $1,200 LPVOs for like half of what they were worth to dump them to go and buy magnifiers just because Grand Dumb said so. It's very weird.
So stupid.
It was so weird.
Like truly, the current modern firearms market is like
it's very schizophrenic.
It's something else, and it's words that I don't want to say on this radio program. But it's like I don't know. The word low T. It is not very Sigma what is occurring there. I'm not seeing the grind set on display.
not much of a grind.
Oh, Daddy, YouTube told me to do it.
Well, if I'm anyone's YouTube daddy, I'll tell you two things. One, don't listen to me. Two, just Draco with iron sights.
Yeah, Draco iron sights.
You don't need anything else. It's really stupid to get anything else. And I'm being completely serious, and you should listen to me, but not just because I said it. You should go and do your own research.
You're a brave soldier of God, and His will guide your bullet. You do not need an instrument. You do not need an instrument of aiming, direction, or by any other means alignment.
You know, the first Draco I ever shot actually had no sights, like at all.
To feel it, you feel it.
It was the guy who was a nice guy. He had recently come from Mexico, but I mean, great guy. And he hands me this Draco, and I go to aim, and I go, wait, this is one of the ones that was meant for like a red dot, and you have nothing on it. And he's like, what you mean? And I'm like, there's no sights on this gun. He's like, you don't need sights, bro. You just aim. And I did.
If anybody's had the pleasure, if you've had the pleasure of shooting a Draco, like you can point shoot them, you'd think like I can't point shoot this better than a handgun. No way, but you totally can.
That was the thing is I was like, okay. And then we were like 40 yards away and shooting like, 12-inch plates. And I just kind of like just start point shooting it, and I'm smacking the crap out of them.
It's absolutely possible. It's very weird. Does not make sense, but
yeah, just your body can, like you said, I do think it is a soldier of God thing. And if you're running a Draco,
God has anointed the Draco as the firearm of the righteous.
God and anime will guide your hand. I'm telling you. So, you know what? I'm almost thinking, do we stop pushing the Draco until we can trick Century Arms into paying us? Because
so they really should have been sponsoring us like a year ago.
Yeah, when we started this whole meta thing, but we're now fully bought in. I think that
That's true.
Anyway, you should send me some money. Send me some money if you don't want me to stop.
Yeah, send us all the old broken guns. We like those.
Oh, we love that. If you could send us like a bunch of your. No, oh my God. You know what would be the best thing? I would say whatever they told me to. If the deal we got was, and here's like, pay close attention to this. Whenever someone returns a Draco for like, a mechanical issue, it just goes straight to us.
Yeah, we need it.
Because one, I want to see what happened. And two, I want to make something funny.
Yeah, and make something good.
Yeah.
Make a Draco Gatling. It'd be good.
Dude, it's like, yeah, we got 20 barrels and 14 good trunnions. So first up, we got some big news. Big news. Biden in front of burning federal building.
Supreme Court NFA invalid?
Supreme Court NFA ATF done.
Oh,
for real? But no, this is the... we got a ruling in one of the 18 to 20-year-old cases. As most of you know, state law notwithstanding, there has been for decades a federal prohibition on selling a handgun to somebody under the age of 21. So you've got a class of adults from 18 to 21 that are denied the ability to acquire a handgun at an FFL. And of course, this is kind of doubled by the fact that when you're out of state, or the only people who can sell you a handgun at a retail level in state would be an FFL.
Right.
You can go out of state to buy rifles. There's all this weird specifics on handguns, right? That kind of narrow it. And then also the 21 requirement, which never really made any sense. And just now, after we started getting states coming up with their own 18 to 20 bans on like purchasing rifles and stuff like that, did the handgun one start getting the attention it really deserved from the beginning? So, and not to say that there's never been lawsuits, it was just nobody really paid attention to it, I feel like. So this is in the Eastern District of Virginia. District Judge Robert Payne, basically in analyzing one of these cases, said that the Bruin standard just doesn't allow for this kind of disparate treatment of adults. So he wrote, because the statutes and regulations in question are not consistent with our nation's history and tradition, they cannot stand. So that's pretty clear. If the court were to exclude 18 to 21-year-olds from the Second Amendment's protection, it would impose limitations on the Second Amendment that do not exist from other constitutional guarantees.
Pretty scathing.
Right. Yeah, the government has not presented any evidence of age-based restrictions on the purchase or sale of firearms from the colonial era, founding era, or early republic. So the interesting thing is that, when you saw news reporting on this from the other side, the headlines never, they never quite made it clear what they were talking about now, did they?
Yeah, the anti-gun side had like a whole bunch of tweets and like their media stuff they were putting out as like, judge is going to endanger everyone by letting young people have guns. It's the most dangerous, violent statistic that in handguns are used in the most crimes. This is going to be devastating. But like they didn't, of course they weren't going to come right out and say that what this means now is that adults are treated like adults, which is so novel and scary, evidently. It's just kind of ridiculous. And the part of this that at least it affected me personally, back when I was a youngin', as if I'm not now. I was in a farming home. It's a rural supply store, and I was trying to buy.
That's like a halfway house for you rural boys, right?
Yeah. So I was trying to buy 1,200 rounds of 7.62 by 39, and also like 150 rounds of 32 ACP because their 32 ACP was outrageously expensive, and they wouldn't sell me the 32 ACP because they kept saying that it was a handgun round, and I was like, no, it's not. I'm going to shoot it through a rifle. And they were very insistent, no, we can't sell this to you, but they still sold me the 1,200 rounds of 7.62 by 39. And of course I was lying. 32 would be going in a handgun, but I was just like, that's such a stupid law. Like, you're going to let me walk out of here with 1,000+ rounds of rifle ammo, but not pistol ammo. It's just it's so stupid. And, I'm sure there's people who have, 9mm rifles.
Yeah.
Because of course 32 rifles aren't super common, but like 9mm rifles are. And would they just not sell you ammo for your gun? It's kind of ridiculous.
So I actually do remember. I remember something like that happening to me. Where I wanted to buy 9mm, and they said that whole thing, and it just snapped to me, and I just said, I have an MP5. I didn't, but they go, oh, and they just sold it to me.
This is going right in my MP5. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I did that like 4 different times. They'd be like, oh, and they look at my ID, and they'd look at me, and I just say, I have an MP5, and they go, oh, which I don't know if that is how it was supposed to work. I don't think it is, but that's just a weird problematic thing there, and I think that's very rarely actually enforced,
right?
Seeing as the record keeping requirements for
ammo sales are
yeah, not there. Oh no, don't give them any ideas. Right. But yeah, so that's
very good news. It's
good news, and it also it just shows the intense disingenuity, right? Because if you were to actually sit out there and say, "Oh, everyone's going to die because because a district court judge said," well,
the Second Amendment exists.
Yeah, the Second Amendment exists, and 18-year-olds are adults. Then people would be like,
It shouldn't be controversial.
Yeah, so they have to do all this mental gymnastics. Now, is it a fact that young people are more likely to commit crimes?
Yep, that's true.
Yes. Is it also a fact that 18-year-olds are able and oftentimes have no choice but to go and live out on their own?
That's also true.
And is it also a fact that when 18-year-olds go and live in their first place, it's not very luxurious?
That is also true.
In fact, there may be, smelly alleys and, and dangers such as Swedish people or
and alligators
or the elderly, So, of course, all kidding aside, young people, yes, they are disproportionately criminals, but they are also disproportionately the victims of crime, right. And thus their rights don't just go away.
It's just, it's especially offensive that in my mind, the Supreme Court is going to recognize the handgun very specifically in Heller, right? Even the anti-gun groups don't contest that Heller said you have a right to have a handgun. Mm-hmm. Now they say that means only handguns, which is insane. But at the very least, they concede. Heller said that you can have a handgun, which is great, and Bruin said that you can maybe even carry that some places outside. But then we're going to have this whole class of 18 to 21-year-olds who, like you mentioned, may be living in not the best sort of areas, which tend to have crime rates or what have you.
They have a lot of Swedes.
The only way these people then can acquire a handgun is by buying one third party, which plain isn't possible in some states. It's illegal in some states. Or the ATF in this particular case argued what they have to do is have their parents buy it for them. And because your parent could buy a gun for you and then sell it to you, your right is not infringed on. And thankfully, this judge took a steaming dump all over that idea. Right. Where it's like, yeah, okay, maybe that works if your parents are game. But the judge did say that would be a straw purchase, which isn't true. That wouldn't be a straw purchase unless you were prohibited. But
right.
It is certainly something that the ATF contends is wrong. Like in the ATF's training documents on what a straw purchase is, they straight up claim that exact situation is a straw purchase, even though it isn't. ATF tries to train FFLs to not do that sort of thing. So it's kind of hilarious in the end. Like ATF's going to tell FFLs, reject these sorts of transactions because they're probably straw purchases and that's illegal. Right. And then in court, they're going to be like, oh yeah, that's fine if that happens. We don't care.
That's an interesting question and of course there's a distinction between a straw purchase, because it would be a straw purchase as defined, right? Because a straw purchase is just
buying something for someone else, right?
Exactly. But whether or not it would be an illegal straw purchase is actually a question that could be debated. Because the other person is not necessarily prohibited from possessing it, but
right, but sort of maybe, right? Because they can't buy it on their own still,
right? And it's one of those things that I don't think that's a correct reading of the law, but there's a non-insane argument, right? And not that I'm saying, and here, guys, I'm not saying that makes this okay. I'm actually saying that makes the law even more unconstitutional, because there is a non-insane argument to say that it would be illegal to acquire it, even in that situation that the government is saying, don't worry, you can just do that if your parents are game or even alive, right?
Right. If your parents aren't extant, well,
or like, you know, an 18-year-old exists on its own, right? Sure, biologically something had to create them, but there's all kinds of people who, you know, were wards of the state. And I don't think their parents are going to buy them a gun unless they want to, you know, sign up to go to a foreign war where our freedoms allegedly got to, you know.
And then there's that angle, right?
Yeah.
Where
right.
There's even some insistence that the voting age should be 16, which to me is mind-boggling. And me and some of the fellows on Twitter got into some arguments about this with a guy who was a quote-unquote constitutional scholar, whose opinion was that voting has never hurt anyone ever. And we sort of argued him down to, okay, maybe voting has hurt people, but you know, I can sit here and tell you, based on the ballots I've cast, people have died as a result of the people that I have voted for. It's kind of insane, right? I've never built or shot a gun that killed someone, though. So it's to me it's insane that people would say that the age for voting should be lower than the age for owning a gun, because it's not a stretch, at least in my mind, by any means, to suggest that voting does have very, very strong consequences. It's not a game. It's not a joke.
Voting's a joke. That's and one of my least popular opinions. Voting's stupid. But voting is stupid unless you enjoy doing it, in which case you should do it. Yeah, have a nice time voting. All right. Next, God, people are going to be mad at me for that one. Just trust me, there's nuance. I don't hate whatever it is you think I hate, unless I do. Whatever. Anyway, next up, we have a great article from Salon.
Oh boy,
these so we already know
the best.
It's going to be good. You know, we were just talking a little bit about that Supreme Court thing, right? That whole Bruen, that whole Hellar.
It's going to be a theme this show.
You might be wondering, just whose fault is this?
Yeah, whose fault is it that the Second Amendment exists?
Well, Salon's onto something. Is Justice Thomas the worst Supreme Court justice ever? His Bruen gun rights decision is killing Americans every day. Every day.
Every day.
This is by Lucien K. Truscott IV, columnist at Salon, which is like...
Is that what we're calling him now?
It's like the journalistic equivalent to like say, oh yeah, I'm a butcher at Buc-ee's.
I'm the one who makes that week-old sushi, bitch. I'm a sushi creationist at Buc-ee's.
Buc-ee's. I'm a confectioner at Buc-ee's. I put the beaver tracks in the bag. Well, anyway, so Monsieur Lucien begins by saying, I guess we should consider ourselves lucky that automobiles were not invented until the late 1800s and did not come into regular use in this country until the early 20th century. Otherwise, the Supreme Court would be busy doing away with requirements for driver's licenses, auto registrations, and environmental regulations on exhaust emissions and gas mileage.
Oh my God. Like, just in that sentence, you could probably have a whole 1 hour discussion about how ignorant, like ignorant of everything, right? From how any of that stuff he specifically described works to like, that's not what Bruen says or does.
Well, and also, like, I think one certainly has a constitutional right to travel, like, right. Move freely, traveler. But there is no enumerated right to the automobile. So that's a minor constitutional distinction. But if there was an enumerated right to the automobile, which there might have been if the founders were aware of them, although they were aware of horses, right? But whatever. He goes on to say, at least that would be true if the reasoning used by Justice Clarence Thomas in his decision in a Second Amendment case was applied to cars, that any regulation of guns in this country must be consistent with the nation's historical tradition of firearm regulation.
And see, this one trips me up real good because the thing that they're insisting, and they won't come right out and say it, is that our constitutional rights, as they are enumerated, as they are described in the Bill of Rights, should be up to the interpretation of the now, which is simply insane. It's simply an insane thing that no serious person would ever suggest. Like, of course, the tricky part with Bruin is it's hard sometimes to look back at what people a long time ago thought, but that is much more difficult than having a set of standards in courts where it's like judges just get to decide what they think it means, which is significantly more silly. Because if you show 100 judges documents from the 1700s that say this is what we think that right meant, you probably get at least 75% of them to agree. If you ask 100 judges what they think the Second Amendment means, you'll probably have 90 different answers at least. And the insistence that they're making is not that we should stick with the text, history, and tradition, but judges should just be able to make it up as they go willy-nilly. Surely that will work well.
Which is what happens when we enter into interest balancing, which is what the state of the law was before.
Right, exactly what happened.
But this is the funny thing. She writes, bam! With one decision, Clarence Thomas threw out about 200 years of jurisprudence and laws that had been passed regulating guns in this country for reasons of, for example, public safety. Nonsense.
There are so few gun safety laws that were even justified as having a public safety concern.
Yeah, you know what? There's one. Proofing. They were like, hey,
that's like your one historical law that had a public safety claim, and like then you have to fast, like even the NFA, they weren't really trying to say this is for the safety of the public.
No, they were like, we can't catch these booze runners. We have to find some way to catch them.
But it was like maybe for cop safety, but like public safety wasn't like a claim. Right.
That wasn't even mentioned. Well, it was mentioned when they were trying to include body armor, but that was quickly thrown out. But like, so yeah, public safety, we had Yankees getting overly cost competitive and making really dangerous arms. And so in some states early on, you were like, hey, you have to like test these.
You actually have to like make sure this is safe before saying that it's a 12 gauge. Okay.
Yeah. Or a 12 pounder. But it's nonsense. The first major gun control period federally was the 30s, right? 34.
Yeah.
It's that jurisprudence has existed, like he says. Well, okay, hold on. The laws have existed for decades. That's right, not centuries. And the jurisprudence. What jurisprudence?
It is not there.
Yeah, like in what Supreme Court cases? Miller, which if followed would actually be better for us.
God, Miller would be like another whole 1 hour podcast on its own. Like, dude, the Miller decision was so weird because like the Miller's own lawyers were just like, yeah, clap them in irons, boys. Take the state's word for everything. It was just like goofy.
And he was also a bit dead.
Yeah,
that like there was a severe justiciability issue. The case was weird, and the actual decision,
really weird case.
The actual decision, if followed, would not be horrible,
right?
And then you had dead silence until 2008.
And like again, the hard thing about Miller is like the argument was that it's that your Second Amendment right is somehow connected to service in a militia,
right?
And so I'll maybe grant this columnist that the sort of twist in jurisprudence, like you had never seen the Supreme Court before 2008 say that, yes, the individual right definitely exists, but you'd seen tons of lower courts, especially at the founding era. It was almost universally understood that it was an individual right. The Second Amendment's original drafts had, it's the right of the people to bear arms for the common defense. And that language was dropped because obviously that makes it unclear that an individual right exists. So it was pretty clear to them it was an individual right, and pretty clear to the courts up through the Civil War era it was an individual right. And then people started to get a little confused. Miller said that it's maybe somewhat related to militia service, but then they also said that you can only own guns that are like war-fighting arms. Very confusing.
Yeah, I like that. You see where this is going? Using his Supreme Court robes to cloak his irrational and, yes, insane reasoning, Thomas came up with a whole new interpretation of the Second Amendment.
Yeah, that's not
even
true.
More extreme than the one written by his pal Antonin Scalia in DC v. Heller, which held that the Second Amendment protected an individual's right to own handguns in his own home for self-defense. Literally first sentence of the next paragraph, with Scalia's radical reinterpretation of the Second Amendment. Oh my God!
I don't know about a reinterpretation because, if you read the Heller opinion, in fact, he cites a large number of cases where it's like, yeah, in this case, they found it's an individual right exists. Like it's not like he invented it out of thin air, but like the of course popular anti-gun talking point is like, whoa, this came from nowhere, because they felt they were that close to a ban on handguns or whatever else that they wanted. And then Scalia took a dump on them, and they claim that it's from nowhere, but boy, it sure isn't.
Right. No, and he whines about the Fifth Circuit domestic violence case, which, I mean, guys, yeah, it's a restraining order misdemeanor. Like, yeah, sorry, it's not legally sufficient to justify it.
Domestic violence is bad. Having a court say that you can have a restraining order against you without any, like, no actual evidence has to be offered up there, right? It's not an actual conviction, and it's not even an indictment.
Well, so yeah, like, no, evidence does have to be offered, but it's not beyond a reasonable doubt,
right?
It doesn't comport with any other. Anyway, the decision was correct. Yes, it's bad to do domestic violence, but you don't, like, the government has there is process that is due before you are stripped of your individual rights. So that decision was correct. And then, of course, in this one, he whines about the 18 to 20 ban as well. And like this cat just goes on and on. We are over the cliff and into the deep gorge of irrationality, folks, and it's killing more and more of us every day. Many of them young children and even babies, as we saw in the viral video from the mass killing in Allen, Texas last Saturday. We're going to have to ask for help from a higher power because we're sure as hell not getting any from the Supreme Court. Oh my
How dare
God.
The evil Supreme Court.
I just read his little thing.
They insist the Second Amendment exists. That's terrible.
Lucien is a graduate of West Point.
Interesting.
He has a 50-year career as a journalist, novelist, and screenwriter.
and a guy who has worms for brains. At least for as long as this article was in process.
Yeah. Anyway, cool article, Lucien. I hope you have a nice
Thanks
day.
for sharing.
Moving on to something with more journalistic integrity than Salon. VZGrips.com. VZGrips.com is a much better source for news and opinion pieces than Salon. on VZ, see right now, this is opinion 1911 grips. Make it your gun. That's a way to do it, right? Let's see if we can do that. Oh, I got the 1911 parts. The shot buff. Magwells, mainspring, housing safeties, bushings, and O-rings and grip screws. Wait, hold on. I want to see what this is. Grip engravings. Full size. No one. If you have a compact grip. Oh, wow. Yeah, they got those. But,
they have all of your favorites, such as Punisher and Punisher 2.
Yeah, but if you do, if you can do custom ones. And guys, if you do order off of VZGrips, whatever, use the promotional code THISWEEK15, that's THISWEEK15, and you need an anime girl on it. You don't have to bother them for it. You can send it to me. I will engrave it for you. But I'm not going to give you exactly what you asked for, so just know that. But the grips are awesome. I've got a bunch of them. They're good. They make your hands happy. And we even talked last time. After shooting with VZGrips, if you take them, I took them off and immediately became injured.
Yeah, the gun flew right out of his hand. It was
out of my hand.
A tragedy.
I got so used to not even having to hold the gun due to the intense grip texture. Yeah, VZGrips.com, Florida company. Good. Support the show. Support the whatever. All right. This next one. This is big. And I don't mean big in like a good way. I mean in like we really did jump the shark 2 seasons ago. So this is the newest. This is a Giffords backed lawsuit. Loved ones sue social media companies over Buffalo massacre. The lawsuit alleges social media platforms help radicalize shooter.
So this all follows in the wake of the guy got life in prison. The shooter got life in prison this week. Mm-hmm. And, so that then Giffords now feels confident, so they've done this before, and Giffords sort of, there's like a big expose where Giffords had ended up bankrupting a family after filing one of these, and I guess we can call it's a frivolous lawsuit is what it is. They're trying to extort money out of people, but out of these companies anyway, and claim that it's like or a gun safety victory is Giffords' aim in this. But Giffords has filed these lawsuits in the past, lost these lawsuits, and then saddled the family with the legal fees, which bankrupted at least one family. And of course, Giffords doesn't care because they're like, we tell them about the risks, which is crazy. But in this particular lawsuit, they're suing a slew of social media companies, including Facebook, Snapchat, Discord, Reddit, Google because of their ownership of YouTube, and Amazon because of their ownership of Twitch.
Which I did not know, because Twitch is not a real platform.
It's not social media exactly, but okay. The
dark website 4chan is also named as a defendant.
the dark website. Yeah, so evidently all of these websites had at least some amount of influence on this shooting, although Facebook's involvement is because they own Instagram, and evidently the shooter was addicted to Instagram when he was younger. And that means that they're a part of this wrongful death suit, which again, like frivolous, but it's they also sued the gun store that sold him the gun, despite the fact that I don't think there was any red flags associated with that sale or anything. So, okay, weird. They should. And then they're also suing RMA Defense, the body armor company, because the shooter wore or owned their body armor, which is it's a real head scratcher. Certainly.
How is Discord involved?
Because the guy was radicalized on Discord or something, because he was active on Discord and it made him racist.
It does that.
It does that. Relatable. Yeah. But the
long article.
This lawsuit will almost certainly get tossed, like all of these other sorts of lawsuits. The grieving families will only have that much more to grieve about, and now they'll be saddled with lawyer fees and debts and those sorts of things. Of course, there's some slim chance, and it's what they're banking on, that one of these companies would rather just like pay out and get out of the lawsuit.
Right.
But it's such a slim chance of that, because it's not like any of these companies really have any liability here. Maybe 4chan, but like they're saying that 4chan's only liable insofar as the videos of the shooting circulated on 4chan.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like you can maybe say like mental suffering or something, but good luck convincing anyone of that.
Right.
And so it's certainly another chapter in Giffords takes advantage of a tragedy to push their gun control ends, and then bankrupt the family and then move on as if nothing happened.
It's a fascinating thing about the anti-gun side, because like they don't have to have a particular direction. They can just kind of push in any and multiple directions.
Right.
And, as long as they can articulate some nexus to firearms restrictions, or even like firearms culture, or racism ?
Evidently.
Yeah, it fits within their charter somehow, and their
you've even seen them. You've even seen them do it on like the abortion question, where it's like, why you're an anti-gun group? Why, I don't think anybody asked for your opinion here, but I guess it's almost to the it's to the point where they're so very clearly a political lobbying group that it's not so much about just the guns to them as it is like about the politics. Where and of course we've seen this where, like, we know the reason that the CDC took the defensive firearm use stats off their website is because anti-gun activists asked them to. Right. I'm sure they've realized that their chance of being successful, especially now, isn't so much in the courts. It's in sort of backroom politicking. And so the more in bed they can get with politicians, the better it is for them. And of course, that then relies on them spreading their fingers into as many pies as possible. And they end up being like I guess if we can call it progressive or liberal, right? That's their umbrella they're under, and they need the things under that umbrella to succeed. And maybe they still want to ban guns at the end of that, but their involvement in all these other things, they can see furthering their goal. So like you said, they can push in any random direction, and it seems to benefit them, or at least suit them. Yeah, or at least sufficient enough to, I really don't know. It's weird. It's weirdly off-brand, right? Like you're a gun control group. What on earth are you doing suing a bunch of companies that are just going to claim Section 230 protections, and you're going to fight them on 230 grounds? That's crazy. That's what Trump wanted to do. Why are you and Trump on the same side of the tug of war? It's cool when we do it. It's lame when he did it. Oh, well, yeah, that's... God, I hate everything. So let's move on. Let's hear from an old buddy that who. Oh God, how do I even say this? Name a U.S. president that was slightly better for guns than Trump. Wait, no, significantly better for guns than Trump. I was gonna say JFK, but Obama. All right, so yeah, here we got a news story from CBS Morning News. Barack Obama says gun ownership has become a growing ideological and partisan issue. This, of course, despite the fact that This, of course, despite the fact that locking Americans in their home for years made it very much not a partisan issue anymore. So anyway. We got this story, they got their little videographer on there talking to the people, whatever. I'm not going to watch this, but I don't want to hear from these people. Former President Barack Obama is urging Americans to have a dialogue about gun violence as the U.S. recently surpassed 200 mass shootings so far this year, according to CBS News data, which is assuredly correct. Right? Like, it is not an insane number. Like the 3 or more injured number, and also includes instances where it's not necessarily a gun, or the gun isn't what injured them. Yes. Like if somebody twists their ankle running away from what sounded like a gunshot, that's a mass shooting. Listen, we got more than one mass shot per day. Okay? Per day. So, Obama discussed the challenges of reducing gun violence and how gun ownership has become an ideological and partisan issue during an exclusive sit-down interview with CBS Morning. And this is from the words of Obama himself. I think somehow, and there are a lot of historical reasons for this, gun ownership in this country became an ideological issue, a partisan issue, in ways that it shouldn't be. It has become a sort of proxy for arguments about our culture wars, urban versus rural. Race is always an element in these issues. Issues of class and education, and so forth. And he's right. Because low-class, uneducated people sit there on the internet saying that the Draco is not the end-all be-all of the personal defense firearm. That's true. It is super funny having Obama be the one saying this, because he was extremely divisive on guns, and even the anti-gun side acknowledges, right? It was him in conjunction with Sandy Hook happening that made the AR-15 super, in terms of popularity, massive spike. Right. But after Sandy Hook and after his we need to ban this and stuff. Well, the other thing, his administration did substantially make carrying firearms in federal land easier. Right. Did eliminate the necessity of getting law enforcement permission to get an NFA firearm.
like actually. Obama is a very challenging case for gun. Like when you look at it from a gun lens,
he did make suppressors harder, right? Where it was individual parts of a suppressor are suppressors.
Well, that wasn't
because I know that's one that ATF's gone back and forth on since.
Yeah, and I don't know how much of that you can attribute directly to him.
Right. Happened under his watch, but not necessarily his fault. It's not like he and Biden seem at least seem different in that regard, where it's very clear Biden's telling the ATF to crap on stuff as he's being meat puppeted by the anti-gun groups, I'm sure. But
meat puppet. But yeah, so Obama continues, instead of just taking a very practical approach like we do, let's say, for example, with car safety, where we say, all right, we got a bunch of accidents, let's have seatbelts. Let's make cars safer, and let's engineer our roads.
On guns.
Let's engineer our roads so we prevent them. Obama observed. You know what cars have? Silencers. Every last one of them. Obama observed. Instead of thinking about it in a very pragmatic way, we end up really arguing about identity and emotion and all kinds of stuff that does not have to do with keeping our children safe.
Most cars also have arm braces. So you can prop up your elbows and keep them on the steering wheel.
They do. Oh man, so that's, I don't know, I just thought that was funny, and of course it's totally vapid, and you know
it's extremely vapid. Like he's going to stand there and pretend that he played no role in this, but he kind of did.
Obama is actually, he's a great politician insofar as he is a master of saying absolutely nothing without sounding like a complete brain case.
So good at it.
Yeah. Like Biden and Trump, when they would try to bloviate, it's like
it's like very obvious that's what they're doing.
Yeah, and also it's like jarring,
right? But
Obama is good at just kind of like yapping, and it's like, I think he's going to get to the point. He's going to get to the point. No, it ain't
there's a point coming there, and you get like a question in your mind, and he doesn't stop talking, and then you forget about your question, and then it's just like, oh yeah, what was I? How was I feeling? He's good at stun locking.
Yeah. That's exactly what he did to the interviewer.
Stun lock you with bloviation.
Yeah, in the interview, he's just in a corner as he just keeps talking. It's just trying to get up. He's just stuck there. All right, so yeah, that was whatever. But hey, so people keep asking me, what can I do? Or they ask people they say that, and I say, give some money to the Second Amendment Foundation. For nearly years, the Second Amendment Foundation has been fighting for your Second Amendment rights, having been involved in over 250 cases and an active litigation load of 40 lawsuits. SAF has the expertise and experience necessary to fight government overreach and challenge unconstitutional laws. SAF, winning firearms freedoms one lawsuit at a time. To learn more or donate, check the link in the description or go to bit.ly/SAF-Busters. SAF is the official Second Amendment national group of the FUD Busters, and they support anime as
That's true. I heard that.
And in fact,
they have free anime of the month, where if you give them money, they'll send you an anime girl, and then if they don't do it, you have to send a message to their email and say, "Where's my anime girl?"
So here's what you do: you donate to SAF, and you write on there, just write in wherever you can. Hey, your adjunct scholar of law and policy said, if I gave this specific amount, no matter what it is, right? No matter what the amount is, if I gave this specific amount, you'd send me a cute anime girl, and I will make sure something happens. I don't know what, but something will happen. All right. So do that. Go to bit.ly/SAFbusters, and you make sure to let them know that their adjunct scholar of law and policy, Matthew LaRosier, told you that they would send you a cute anime girl. So that's what you do. All right. Thanks, guys. Oh, man. This next story. I can't believe this.
It's unheard of.
ATF changed their mind.
You won't believe it.
No, check it out. Look, because you're supposed to get a letter, right, from ATF before you sell anything to make sure it's not an NFA gun, right? That's in the law.
Yeah, you have to do that. It's in the law.
Everybody have to do that.
PSA didn't start selling Chinese Spiker knockoffs at AOWs. That didn't happen. Everybody asks ATF. It's in the law.
That's funny. So yeah, but you know, they did it on the Reformation, and they did that weird thing where it's a GCA only SBS.
Well, of course, like the first time they were asked, they said it was just straight up fine. It was a rifle, and they didn't even care. It's just a firearm.
Right.
And then everybody was happy. And then, like, out of nowhere, it's not like one was used in a shooting or a bunch were recovered or anything, because nobody wants to buy the stupid unrifled smoothbore 223. It's dumb.
Well, and hold on. Remember, we're talking about the Franklin Army Reformation here, and that's the, like, it's the churro bore.
Right, it's just got straight rifling grooves. There's no twist to the rifling at all. They were going to design the football-shaped bullet that would drag stabilize, and then they never did.
Yes, but it was... But the chambering was the same as 300 Blackout, but it was like really for this churro bullet thing, the football churro bullet.
Yeah, it's like a Nerf football bullet that was meant to drag stabilize and actually be accurate. And then that, of course, never worked.
Never happened.
Super cool if it did. Super cool if it did, but it didn't.
Yeah, and it was like horrifyingly inaccurate at 100 yards.
Yeah,
like,
and of course, then it would just keyhole otherwise. Yeah. So,
but yeah, so out of nowhere, out of God and nothing, right? They just show up a few years back, or was this like last year?
It was a couple of years ago. Like, Trump may have. I think it was Trump was still president.
Yeah, and they said that was their bizarro. Wait, hold on. We said it was just a firearm. Now it's not a short-barreled shotgun under the NFA, but under the GCA, it's a short-barreled shotgun. And so it created this entirely new category.
The completely new category of regulated gun.
Yeah, which was like the most snake-tongued, like high-tier lizard sophistry that I had ever seen. Right. And so everyone was just kind of like, everyone kind of just threw their hands up and said, okay, we don't want it anyway, right?
Right. And I thought the way it shook out is that ATF wasn't going to pursue making sure you registered them because they weren't NFA items, but because they would be GCA short-barreled shotguns, no new ones should be being sold.
Right.
And it's like everybody was sort of there like, what does that actually mean?
Right. And so it was weird. But then now, again,
they've changed their mind another time. Of course, Franklin Armory, I think through FRAC, which is their coalition of gun industry people that sue over stuff, questions like this. They sued the ATF over calling it a Gun Control Act shotgun, and now the ATF in court is like, oh, it was also an NFA short-barreled shotgun. Why not?
Yeah, so that's what this letter is, and it goes through 9 pages of. Like,
I mean, it is insane, the logic
this is not
they're employing here.
This is not ordinary. And like, guys, I read this crap constantly. This is not a normal dead letter.
It's advanced. It's advanced.
No, this is do not call this advanced. This is like second year law student at fucking like Thompson and Cooley School of Law trying to, which by the way, for those of you who don't know, that's the law school that when people are going to take the bar, thank God exists, because the like 30% fail percentage are mostly from that like mass produced lawyer factory. But so yeah, this is one of those students' attempt to write a legal brief to explain an indefensible position where just a bunch of nonsense is cited. And then a conclusion is drawn. Like,
so the big distinction between an NFA and GCA short-barreled shotgun is that under the NFA, they define a shotgun as firing a shotgun shell, essentially. Yeah. There's exact language for that, but it's like it fires its own particular type of shotgun ammunition. And of course, this gun didn't do that. It still had a singular projectile, and it fed from a metallic case, and it was even bottlenecked. So it certainly wasn't a shotgun shell. But under the GCA, it just imports the federal definition of ammunition that I think also came from the GCA,
right?
Where it's a self-contained thing. It's got the primer, bullet, powder, and case, and it all comes in as one unit, and it's just the action of an explosive propels a projectile. So they had said initially that this thing was a Gun Control Act short-barreled shotgun because this ammunition does technically meet the definition of ammunition, and it does, assuming a bore that has straight rifling grooves cut in it counts as smooth bore, which, spoiler alert, it shouldn't.
No, it's not.
Assuming it does, right? Assuming that counts as smooth, but boy, it's sure not smooth. That wouldn't have been a gun. It would have been a Gun Control Act shotgun insofar as the ammunition choice doesn't exclude it there, but the bore certainly doesn't.
And here's some of the real snake tongue language. As evidenced by so these metallic cartridge shotgun shells fired by shotguns existed at the time Congress passing GCA, as evidenced by the GCA's implementing regulations exclusion of only non-metallic shotgun hull or casing from the GCA definition of the term ammunition.
So that's like insane.
Yeah, that's like, that is not what they were thinking.
Right.
They were not thinking of brass shot. Like, they're not saying we need to like make sure we stay on top of these full brass shells.
Right. It's like the NFA has very specific language in it. Most of the federal gun control statutes have very, very specific language in it that was, as bad as it is, right, as much as we don't like these laws, they were very carefully crafted as far as their language goes. Like, there were specific things they were trying to capture and then things that they weren't trying to capture, as to avoid making it overly broad. Right. And that's, at least part of the reason the NFA specifically says, smooth bore, and specifically says uses a shotgun cartridge. Mm-hmm. And of course, I know there's I know in response to this, one of the things that Franklin Armory was working on was a whole new gun that's trying to poke, it's trying to widen the divide between an NFA short-barreled shotgun and a GCA short-barreled shotgun. Like, they're continually trying to troll the ATF over this, which is probably why the ATF's trying to fight them so hard, and why the ATF changed their minds now a third time on this question, because they don't want to end up being strung into court with one of their cases that they're arguing against this same company, where they're saying that, yes, a gun designed this way is this thing, or they have a similar gun that's designed like the opposite way, that and they're arguing is then somehow not the same thing. Yeah. And so they're trying to
is also still the same thing.
Like, the set of situations has changed. Oh, it's still the same thing. Yeah, it's for sure the same thing. And they don't want to have that happen.
Yeah. As the three firearms each possess barrels of less than 18 inches, they are each a short-barreled shotgun and an NFA firearm, and are subject to all controls and provisions of the NFA. Sorry, Charlie. No more churro gun for you. Why? I don't know. Oh, man. It's so stupid.
And of course, I think we've mentioned this before, but as much as people liked to crap on the Franklin Armory stuff, and as much as we were sort of just doing it, I do at least applaud them for their, like essentially what they're doing is trying to troll and get around the NFA and the GCA, and they're trying to make the ATF's lives miserable. And I do appreciate them for doing that, because they've got several other designs to the same effect, where they've of course, a lot of it's just tailored at state laws, where they multiple times they've made California change their assault weapons laws because of little doodads and gadgets that they've invented to get around them. Yeah, and I do applaud like the combination of lawyer gunsmith that they have working there, where it's like, hey, if we make a gun that does this, then it escapes the law and it'll freak them out, and then they do it.
This is a good article. It's from Vox. My God. Listen, did you know that the Supreme Court has a shadow docket?
Shadow docket. Oh, it's so scary. What's on the shadow? Is it skeletons? There's skeletons there?
Yep, there's some bones. There's some boners in there.
Ghosts and ghouls?
The ghouls, goblins, ghosts. And a case on this court shadow docket could strike down state and local bans on AR-15s and similar weapons.
Oh no, please not that.
Look at this. Look at this totally non-topical image of a bunch of uppers on a gun show table.
Yeah, every gun show table that has those Bear Creek Arsenal uppers on that same green rug, all of them have that. Every gun show I've ever been to has that.
Anyway, the Supreme Court could hand down a decision any day now in National Association for Gun Rights versus the City of Naperville, a case that could legalize assault weapons and high-capacity magazine clips in all 50 states. Now, you're probably familiar with this one.
Yeah. So this is where all, as of Friday, of course, depending on when this airs, as of the month that we're in, as of May 12th, yesterday.
14th right now.
Yes. Yeah, it is for you. You darn Eastern coaster.
Yeah.
As of May 12th, all of the cases that all of the big federal cases in Illinois are now consolidated. So the 4 downstate cases where that injunction had been granted, but then it was stayed by Mr. Eastercrook, have been consolidated with the 2 cases from Naperville and the one that was Cook County. And so now all 6 of those are consolidated in the district court. Of course, there was a split in the district courts where there was the injunction, of course, from Stephen McGlynn with the 4 consolidated cases, but then both of the northern cases didn't do an injunction. So, of course, Mr. Frank Eastercrook then gets these cases. And you may remember... You remember Mr. Eastercrook, whose real name might be Easterbrook, but I'm not sure, so I'm going to stick with Eastercrook.
No.
He's a Reagan-appointed judge, and you may remember him from such hits such as Friedland, the Friedman case from also from Illinois, where he held that literally any public interest case that a state can claim will validate any gun control law. And he included if it just makes the public feel safer. That's plenty of justification for a state to pass any gun control law they want, even if it flies in the face of Heller. So of course, he was king interest balancing in that regard. He took interest balancing to a whole new level where the state doesn't even have to argue with statistics. The state just has to say, it'll make the people feel better. And so he's a little bit of a scumbag in that regard. And so he, of course, he's the one that stays the injunction that was granted downstate and sort of put a stop to that fun. And so the case that actually appealed to SCOTUS's shadow docket was the Naperville case. So the Naperville case was denied a preliminary injunction. And in the opinion that denied the preliminary injunction, the judge used interest balancing, which Bruin said you're not supposed to do. The judge, contrary to a lot of judges that have denied injunctions to assault weapons bans, this judge was also AR-15s aren't in common use because they have to be in common use specifically for self-defense. And that means people have to be being killed by them in self-defense for them to be in use, which is an insane theory to adopt. And it's, of course, flies in the face of both Heller and Bruin that, the state was making a lot of ridiculous claims. And of course, the city of Naperville was also making the claim that there isn't a right to sell guns anywhere in the Second Amendment. And they are continuing to argue this. So there's a lot of flies in the face of a lot of court cases, arguments being made here. And of course, Mr. Eastercrook loves them because Mr. Eastercrook sucks. Because the theory that I've seen for this is Eastercrook was almost tapped to be appointed to the Supreme Court, and then he wasn't. And so ever since then, he's been very upset about that, and he wants to write his own opinions and make his own little gun laws in the Seventh Circuit. Make his own little gun laws, his own interpretations, but
his own little baby ones.
So the Naperville case appealed to the Supreme Court's shadow docket. And for those unfamiliar, usually the way that works is the Supreme Court ignores those sorts of things. Right. But in this particular case, Amy Coney Barrett is the one who oversees the Seventh Circuit. And she asked for the state and the city to respond, and then for the plaintiffs in these cases to respond. So she wants more information, which is kind of cool. And the briefs were very interesting because the state and the city they're 100% all in. They're like, oh yeah, it's only common use whenever you're actually shooting people with them. Also, the Friedman case also held that muskets in 1791 is the only thing that the Second Amendment actually protects. And they argued that.
That's good.
It's a big power.
I mean, they're not playing the game well.
They're not.
They're certainly playing the game, and it's a bold strategy.
I mean, the state and the city are really going for it. And
I'll let them.
They argued a whole line of okay, are you sure? And as well as they're again incorporating this theory that there is no constitutional difference between an AR-15 being a semi-automatic rifle and an M16 being a fully automatic rifle, because of that one weird out-of-place line in Heller that talks about how M16 rifles, you may think that the Heller decision would let you own them, but maybe it doesn't, but they're not sure and they're not answering that question. Mm-hmm. The state likes to take that one blurb out of context and be like, oh yeah, M16s are completely banned. You can't have those, right? Which is weird because further true. Right.
Yeah.
It's certainly a head scratcher, but the state is incorporating that to mean that anything like M16s must certainly be okay to ban, and that there isn't a difference between AR-15s and M16s, which is a really bold strategy. I'd love to see that play out the way that
Let's take this train to the last stop.
So they're certainly like Hail Mary all in front of the on these briefs to the Supreme Court. And then our side did like a fantastic job. There were amici briefs from National Shooting Sports that Paul Clement had wrote that were like fantastic. Of course, there was like one or two concessions that he made where it was like, oh, we're not trying to say short-barreled shotguns should be legal. And I'm like, okay, come on. You didn't have
Paul Clement wrote for sure.
Right. You didn't have to say that guy. Come on. But it was really good responses from our side. And then from what I've heard, the theory is that the Supreme Court, that Amy Coney Barrett took it before the full Supreme Court because she could rule on her own, but that's generally improper. So evidently they conferred on Thursday, so the day before Friday, and that their next day that they would announce orders would be Monday. So maybe Monday we find out some interesting news, but maybe not. We'll see.
Maybe not. Most likely not. But we'll keep an eye on it for sure.
Right.
Speaking of things to keep an eye on, you should keep an eye on all of the sales and available items on the MAV Corporation. It's Le Manufacture d'Armes et Carillon de Floride, and there is the best apparel available on the internet, online, on this web zone. And also on top of that, some of the cheapest AR parts that exist in the world, $42.69 for a blemished bolt carriers group, which I don't even know, whatever. Check it out, and you can get a promotional discount. It's FRN, Foxtrot Romeo November. You can find whatever. Just go on there, look around, buy the Magic ATF ball. It's funny. Everyone likes it. Everyone has a nice time.
It's Magic and ATF and ball.
It's ball. It's definitely ball. So check it out. So this is a good story. We're going to finish with this one. I'm going to just read the title. Please don't use guns to fish. Kansas officials warn. That's a great headline. Officials from the Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks came across a fishy situation last Friday after finding a firearm allegedly being used to fish.
Handgun.
A Finney County game warden seized a 9mm handgun that was being used to take fish in Garden City. The warden said that written violations were issued for illegal means of take of fish and no fishing license. They also reminded Kansas that firearms are not a legal means to take fish. While firearms can't be used to fish in Kansas, it is, however, legal to fish with a bow and arrow or crossbow. Jesus. Oh, this is stupid. Yeah. In addition to being illegal, using guns to shoot fish can be dangerous, according to the game wardens. They wrote that shooting at a body of water can be a dangerous activity because bullets can ricochet off of the surface of the water. Yeah.
We need this is actually insane. And next they're going to say that you can't use dynamite either.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. What is this country coming to? All right, and last up, guys, it's Patriot Patch Company. That's patriotpatch.co. Patriot Patch offers custom designed patches, apparel, and accessories for any freedom-loving individual. And of course, we've got promotional code TWIG10. That's This Week in Guns 10. It's a special code just for us, just for the site, just for you, the listener. You can check out the May exclusive. I got it on my thing. It's right here on my thing. You can see the quality. You can see the thickness and the depth, the 3 dimensions of this patch. And it's got that deep, chewy, soft PVC you all like so much. It delivers every month. Auto renew patch of the month club. You never know what you get. It's a nice little morale booster. That's why they call them morale patches. It's because when you join the patch of the month club, you get a morale boost. It adds +1 to your affinity score. So yeah, patriotpatch.co. Check them out. Use promotional code TWIG10, and they got other things, little accessories like cleaning mat, signs, stickers, shirts. Check them out. They're a good company. You know it because they get banned from the social media. Well, that's it for today. We've got some more interesting stuff coming on. Mr. Iban here gave me an interesting idea for a video I was thinking to do, and I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts on it. It would be a basic primer on how federal courts work, on the criminal side and on the civil side. Why don't you give a recap of the idea, and we'll see what the audience.
Yeah. So one of the things that Mr. Matt and I both agree is that the one thing that gun law YouTube suffers from the most is like clickbait,
lying.
the lying clickbait anxiety, like outrage farming. It's bad and sometimes even like actually demonstrably detrimental. And a lot of it is sort of fueled by the fact that most people, and this isn't an accusation, if you don't understand the courts, it's not your fault. It's actually kind of like arcane knowledge. It is hard to come by and shouldn't have to be. And so the idea would be that our friend Mr. Lawyer Man here would put together a video or perhaps series of videos that explain like actually how, like what's an appeals court, what's a circuit court, what's a district court, what's a northern, southern, eastern district, why are there so many districts, how does that relate to the Supreme Court, why don't they just argue Bruin at Supreme Court, why don't you just appeal straight to Supreme Court, how come you don't have to go through a state court to be in federal court? All these questions and more answered on the next episode of Fudbusters ?
Right. So that would, so like, do you think like 1 30-minute video, like one video on state courts, one video on federal courts? Let me know in the comments what you guys want to hear. But aside from that, that's all we got for you today, folks. And as usual, we will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I sail away.